And welcome everybody to the Claude Mastery Sprint, part of our January 2026 workshop series, where we're going to be focusing on one tool, Claude, and Claude Code to master it for our business, sales, marketing, and operations. Going to be tuning in today with members of the GenAIU University community, checking in on our wins from the week in using Claude, our questions, and making some recipes. Got a few demonstrations up my sleeve that we can roll out today. And want to say hey to everyone that's tuning in. How's everyone doing? Let me know. Drop a comment.
Yeah. Thank you for the video to attach Firecrawl.
Yeah,
Appreciate
hope that was helpful. For those of you that haven't seen it, question came up a few times after the kickoff last week was, how do I actually connect Firecrawl MCP inside of Claude? So it's about 6 minutes inside the community now. It's on YouTube as well. Just a very quick demonstration of how to get that set up. The same process can be applied to setting up MCP integrations for different servers for a lot of different tools. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea about how to get these tools in with Claude. So all that said, I'd love to start this off today before we dive into any sort of like demonstrations or anything else. Any breakthroughs or big wins coming off of the first call last week? And is anyone like stuck in anything really specific related to getting started with Claude? We didn't start going deep into Claude Code yet. I do want to share with you guys a way I was using Claude just last night that kind of blew my mind, and I think will give you some idea and inspiration around how deep we can potentially go over the next few weeks with Claude and Claude Code. But before we get into that, let's check in with everybody. Any big wins? Let's start off with Assad.
I actually I didn't need to watch the YouTube. I went into Firecrawl, and over there they had a step-by-step guide into how to put it into Claude. I managed to do that, and then I took your skill and stuck it into Claude, and I'm not very sure exactly what prompt I said or whatever, but then I got a complete blueprint from and pretty impressive one. Where I got stuck is how do I translate that into projects? So I've got the skills installed. How do I make use of that in the projects? Because that is the two sides that you taught us last week,
Hmm.
the skills and the project. So how does that apply into the project again?
Yeah, good question. I think it's a pretty quick answer that way I can share here first. I think it'll be helpful for everyone to understand how these all apply. Because once you have skills being trained in Claude, once you have MCP tools set up, then like projects are a way to give specific knowledge blocks to Claude so that it has the right type of context as you're building things out. And so if you're running an agency, you might have two, three, four, five, 10, or dozens of different clients that you're working with. And if you put all of that information into one project, there may be too much information, too much context that's totally irrelevant that will start to muddy down the context that you're going to be working with. And you don't want to be working with a dental client that has specific information, data, campaigns, and then you have a med spa, for example, that is completely different in the same project if you're trying to keep those contexts and campaigns totally different. And so when I'm setting up projects for different ventures, different ideas, different clients, different whatever, you can see just on my side, I have GenAI University as a project. I have SideHustle Live as a project. I have for our the call that's meeting before this one for our smaller group, individual projects for each one of the people inside of that specific group, different publishing projects, different apps that I'm working on. All of these have their own knowledge inside of these projects. So I use the side hustle example often. I have a couple different projects for this one. So this is a more recent one. But inside of an individual project, you can have it get context about this show that you can add to your project for its memory. And then it'll reference this like more directly as you're building out a project. You can add
Yep,
custom
but my
instructions.
question is,
Yeah.
what do you put into the project As to make use of the skills with the project, what information do you put in the project?
As far as I understand it right now, if I wanted to use any skill that I have in my Claude account, those will all be applicable directly inside of a project. So if I say
Yeah, no, but
use, yeah,
what do you put into the projects? What should I put into should I, for example, take the blueprint that I got from using the market source and the skills and put it into the project and then build on that, or what?
yeah. So I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying here. So if I'm totally not answering a question, let me know. But if you're building a blueprint like I built for you, Assad, and then you
Yeah,
have a project, add that to your files as a knowledge base
yeah.
so that it understands that blueprint going into things and as you're referencing other skills. So you generate a blueprint, that's great. You could upload that into your files as a knowledge base that your project will have as part of its memory.
Not in the project. Yes,
Yes.
it has its
Yeah.
own file.
Yeah, this project will have files. Like Leandra and I were working on a project just yesterday or the day before. Yeah, yesterday and today. And so I set up like the starting point of her project right here. I haven't added her file just yet on that one. Let me find one that has it for like game instructions, for example. Like here. So this is the main one that I use for the branding stuff for this project. I just uploaded a buyer's brief, community context, rules and instructions, and like the brand guidelines. And I don't really need much more than that right now.
And
But
then once you do that,
yeah,
what do you then do? You bring in the information that you've got concerning that project, put it in the files of the project. How do you make use of the skills together with that project? How do you get things in the, how do you get the Claude to apply the skills to that project and answer your questions? Where do you do it? Inside the project or outside the project, or where exactly?
I would work in specific conversation threads in a specific project that has the knowledge that you're wanting to work with. If you're wanting to execute any skill related to that project.
Show me where.
So
I'm being a bit insistent, it's just that I'm
it's
trying to
okay.
really get.
Yeah.
So inside the project, I go into the thread inside the project. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you can start any new conversational thread here if you want. If I wanted to run like one of the Market Sauce Prime recipes for this brand, I would just say execute Market Sauce like inside of this project for this thing, and then I would just click it and Claude, if it does
Okay.
what it's supposed to.
Now I understand. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
like that.
so you
This is
go
the
into
yeah.
the project itself, and then you say in the project, you've got the files in that project. So you're inside the project in the chat within the project,
Yes.
and you say use these skills, or you would
Yes.
let Claude decide on the skills.
Yeah, I would be very specific about the skills you want it to use. And this is something someone else in the community had mentioned when they're using skills is being very particular about I want you to use this skill right now for this particular thing. Is it apparently, and I haven't seen this as much on my end yet, but apparently sometimes Claude can maybe like tap into using other skills that you may or may not have wanted it to if it like has access to those skills at
And
times.
can you assign skills to a project?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm just
That would
showing
be
this screen
interesting.
right now because you can see the read the prime. You see it's like reading the
Yeah.
recipe in the .md file. So this could be any of those recipes that we developed and that you guys have access to inside of the what am I saying here? The recipe cookbook. I don't think you can assign recipes to a project right now. Let me see. You can edit it, try and chat, download, replace. You can toggle them on or off. And so I'll probably actually don't want it to even like reference a few of these right now. So I'm just going to keep a handful of these up as it is. But making sure that you're in the project with a client or with the specific knowledge for that project that you want it to be running anything for, and then just selecting the recipe. And this may vary, like this isn't always going to be the case. You see now it's running the Firecrawl escape skill or MCP tool. This may not always be the case. There's going to be edge cases here, but I try to keep recipes as you could make one recipe specific for one brand and include all the brand name and that sort of stuff. But if you tell Claude inside of your recipe, execute variable brand, Claude's going to figure it out, or use this brand's website that I'm going to give you. It'll fill in those blanks with those variables. Hope that makes sense. You don't have to be.
Okay, I was just trying to tie in everything to get a picture of a full picture so as I can understand that the mix,
Yeah.
the full mix. Okay, we've learned the skills, we learned you take a recipe, stick it in there, and then basically it's going to apply it, hopefully, to whatever it is that you're asking for. So, or you can toggle it off. I just wanted to know then the next step is using it for specific projects.
Yes, and it's the comment here is a great way to sum all this up. And this is my understanding of it. This is how it's been true from when I've been using it. If you use a skill in a project, the skill will use the project files, instructions, etc. for context. And so you want to set up a project to have any of this context first. And if you're starting with a blank project, there's nothing wrong with that. But that is why we tend to start things with a buyer's brief or a blueprint as at least a starting point. Just you have some sort of baseline about, hey, this is my business context. This is my information. If you look through that cookbook, it's like at least a basic business brief and a blurb. If you guys go through, and again, everybody here has, it is still open if anybody hasn't used it yet. So don't think that because we're like almost at the end of the first week that it's not available to you. I'm going to share it here if you would like my support in running your first blueprint to start this process off. And if you're feeling lost because this is your first meeting, I would recommend going back and watching the kickoff call, Carlos, just to catch up on where we're at. We covered some of the basics of where we're starting with Claude there that I won't reiterate in full on this call, but I will share with you where to go find all that information right now as well. Here is this. So a lot of you have already filled this out, okay? And if you haven't filled that out and you're part of the community and part of the sprint, just drop like literally a 32-word blurb about your business and your website, and I will run the market sauce blueprint for you so that you have like a starting point that you can build off of. And if this is your first call that you're tuning into, go to the community classroom, go to the mastery workshop. And now we're on the Claude Mastery series. And so week one, call one, we'll link you to the Market Sauce cookbook. This is where I've shared a bunch of different recipes that are starting points, but I walk through how to get skills and your basic MCP set up inside of Claude here. And there's a breakdown of this as well. As a starting point, if you're still feeling lost after going through this first one, just shoot me a direct message on School, and I'll do my best to answer your questions in a timely manner. Okay, cool. I think we got everybody in here. So I saw another, I think, Nikki, I saw your hand was raised. Any other maybe wins or breakthroughs from the first call, or is anyone feeling a little stuck about where to go and move forward with Claude? Love to hear both challenges and wins as we can learn from how we're using Claude. But yeah, Nikki.
I spent all day until 9 o'clock at night working the skills section. I built everything in skills. I didn't touch the projects, and it has developed. I've trained it in 3 different areas to search for toxicity as the root cause of someone's illnesses, and it's generating like 120-page output workbook. It's mind-blowing what the capacity. I'm beyond thrilled with it. But I haven't touched projects. Should I be exporting all of this into a project, or how does that?
You don't need to export anything. The key, this is ties into what Assad was saying, was once you have your skills set up and Claude knows all of your skills, Claude has the skills. Claude's got the tools. Now you need to be like, hey, Claude, I'm going to this project. Come with me. You open up a project in Claude. Claude is in there. You can open a new conversation. You say, Claude, create a market sauce blueprint for my client. Here's my client's information. And so give me an example of a client that you work with. This might be helpful for how you would set up a project.
Let's say someone comes with Hashimoto's. I've trained this thing to go through the series of questions on what the likely sources or causes of that might be, and have them ask for. I'm setting up a chatbot so that the intake form is basically designed but personalized to what they need to understand.
So you're doing that first, and then you're getting that information for a client, and then you're running it to Claude, or am I
It's
not
the
understanding?
chatbot will be trained by Claude based on what I've trained it to look for or to know to ask. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
Are you sharing like a Claude chat with other people outside of it, or are you building a chatbot in something else?
I would ultimately like to share the chatbot and then I'll get the report that they can print out and download, and if that makes sense.
It does. You might run into issues with sharing like your Claude, like a chat bot inside of your Claude project directly. Have you tried sharing it already with people?
Claude was saying I need to create make.com or some other external that is able to sync up with the skill.
Yeah. So when I think of skills, I think of recipes. I think of specific instructions that we want people to be able to follow every time that they're using a chatbot or going through a process and a series of questions like this. You can custom code your own. May require a little bit more of technical working and setting up with a tool like Claude and doing that sort of thing that you may or may not have seen us do. And this goes across the board. Some people are familiar with a tool that we've used and showed before called Pickax, which is a model agnostic type of AI studio setup tool where you can create, and this is how basically it allows you to gate a tool, give people access to a tool, allows them to have conversations with that tool, and then you can analyze their responses as like a service provider, and then you could use that to inform other information. You can build pickaxes. If you were more technical, you could go and build that sort of thing yourself. Most people like maybe don't fall on that far of the technical spectrum to be able
I
to like build a full thing out. I can share you resources for you guys. Like we've used it before. This isn't a pickaxe pivot to like demo like how to use and build with pickaxe, but the problem you'll run into with just building a project and a chatbot inside of Claude and like that is that you will have to actually give somebody access to like your Claude account to have access to it, and then you'll be able to see it and review it. Most like coaches and consultants and stuff aren't going to want to do that. But building pickaxes with Claude and building those recipes, like that's how I use it. I'll build the recipe in Claude, I'll build the skill, and then a pickaxe chatbot will literally just be like one series of instructions that I'll walk them through. And then I can also select like Claude Opus 4.5 as the model that my pickaxe project will use. So it's still using Claude as the backbone. For me, you could also use ChatGPT, you can use Gemini. It's model agnostic in terms of how you can build with it. But that would be like probably, unless you wanted to go and build your own version of this, which you could do too, that would be another option for building out an interface that you could actually send to clients that you could gate, make sure that they're a paying client of yours, or you're not giving away like your prompt to somebody and then having them go through and run Claude and then they'll get insight into what they're creating. If anyone is interested in setting up a pickaxe, just message me. There are free trainings on our YouTube channel that will show exactly how to do it. And again, I use Claude for a lot of those tools too, but that is a limitation, at least as of right now, until opens up some sort of studio like that themselves. Hope that makes sense for what you were asking. I know a lot of people that are trying to build these tools to give to clients will run into the same issue because I ran into that myself. So it's either you have to custom code it or you have to use a tool that'll have a lot of that stuff already built, and then you just plug in your pickaxe or your Claude model. Cool. Any other wins? Any other questions? Is that here? I'm checking the chat just to make sure I'm not missing anything. Seems like we just want to make sure that we're all clear exactly where projects fit into this mix versus skills, and making sure that we're having an understanding of how we're using that. If anything is unclear, like it's a pretty important thing to make sure that we're clear on. So I want to make sure that we're able to cover that. And if it's not clear, it's totally cool too.
I have a quick question. Yeah, so for projects, as far as our team goes, we have a brand guide, but the house file team has under the table, Ali, the head of brand, should close their ears or not listen right now. So we can be a little more aggressive. I have the brand guide and I started using it, and the responses were like weak on the copy, too soft, not aggressive enough. And I tried to do it some more and said, this violates the brand guides. I'm like, what do you mean? Because I had mentioned fear-based and fear-mongering. And I said, how does that make sense when the founder story and the brand guy talks about his baby boy looking like he was scalded with hot water because the commercial detergent had chemicals or whatever? And he said, you're absolutely right. That doesn't make sense to have those restrictions. So I created our own. I put emotional, visceral language and stuff like that. Do you think I have to do that, or can I share with Meredith and Jessica the real brand guidelines, and then in the custom instructions tell it don't be so strict? Which way is like most efficient?
I would definitely test it if I were you, but that would be the place I would focus on for your custom instructions. Always like the type of language, the structure, any sort of like words that you want to always have it avoid, any words you would rather use more often. Having a really clearly defined set of custom instructions that will influence like everything inside of a project. I would start there and then see how that influences
Okay.
all of the outputs. Yeah, but that way you're
My
not like every new chat, not having to tell it every single new chat to do this. It just kind of has it in its memory.
Yeah, I'll test it. My fear is that if you have this long list of instructions, sometimes it doesn't follow it exactly. You have to remind it, hey, follow your instructions. That's what I've found. So I was just curious which way is going to be the most efficient.
Yeah, it may be. And again, because sometimes these tools will like just act up and do weird AI stuff. And you're like, what are you doing? You weren't acting. This wasn't a problem last week. And Claude, I've heard this over the course of time and for the last few years, like some months, it's like Claude is being super woke this month. Like it won't do anything related to anything on this type of like marketing or copy. And then the next month it's totally cool and it's like cussing at me. And so it's sometimes you just have to adapt with how like the model is like producing its feedback. But I would say if you're having an issue with it remembering to follow its instructions and just probably just prompting it regularly or just as always part of your prompt, make sure you follow the instructions here. Might just be a good place to start from and test it out and see how consistent it does once you have those custom instructions set up.
Thanks.
Yep. See a question here from Bob. I have a bunch of custom GPTs. If I wanted to bring those into Claude environment, are those skills? I would say for the most part, yes, because you have your custom GPT, which is the like the instruction that you're giving a custom GPT in terms of this is everything I want you to do. This is what you know how to do. That is pretty much what a skill is. And that's how I viewed custom GPTs is like basically adding a recipe into a custom GPT so that I don't have to retype the recipe every time or copy and paste it. But you want to use a custom GPT, like a skill within a project, so that the project has the knowledge that you would want that custom GPT to be aware of, if that makes sense. And feel free to come off if it doesn't, because some of the stuff is new in how I'm articulating it. And so if something isn't landing, if it needs to be more clarification, please let me know. Let's talk through it because I want to make sure it's clear because there are some differences in how you set up a custom GPT. Specifically, there are some limitations as well in terms of like knowledge files that would be attached to skills, which I want to make sure is clear. Bob, do you need any more clarification on that?
Yeah, thanks, Darby. Yeah, there's one in particular that I use on a pretty much daily basis. It's the one that I use to support my podcast. And so I think it has a couple documents in it. I don't know if those would be considered artifacts in Claude, but a couple documents that it references. But yes, all my system instructions. This is how I want you to format show notes. This is how I want you to write my intros and social posts and stuff like that. So it knows about the show. It knows about me. It knows what structure to use. Don't repeat titles. Don't repeat stuff like that. And so I just want to migrate into the Claude environment. I'm just trying to get my bearings in terms of how the terminology relates. So right now, I guess to your comment, Darby, I don't know what a Claude project would be. Again, if you covered this at the beginning, I don't want to hold people up. But when would I have a project versus a skill? Like what is a project? What do people use projects for?
So just speaking from like how I differentiate them, let's say I have GenAIU University and then I have SideHustle, which are two separate things. There's some crossover here or there, but like SideHustle has its own instructions, it has its own knowledge, it has a completely different type of target audience. Again, is some crossover in terms of entrepreneur, but it's a game, it's a comedy show, it's a thing over here, right? I have one project set up for Side Hustle that has that brand specific information, brand style, tone, color schemes, do's, don'ts, negative keywords I want to avoid, any sort of custom instructions related to brand voice. That would be housed inside of a project, inside of the brand memory, inside of that project. And inside of, I realize I'm not sharing my screen right now. And so I want to go do stuff with Side Hustle. I'm going to come in here and it's going to have like my buyer's brief, community context, game instructions, memory. And then I have a bunch of different threads, which like if I had like a new video I was producing on YouTube for it, I would, or a new like anything, I would just start a new thread. And then it's already referencing all of this context with in this thread. Inside of this conversational thread, I can execute a skill that because I'm inside of this project, that skill will do headlines, titles, description, research, whatever like thing, like instruction, start to finish that like my skill is, it's going to do that within context to like also referencing all of this information. So if I'm like, here's my email like outreach sequence builder for Side Hustle sponsorships. I want to like, hey, go research 10 sponsors in Austin that I can reach out to today. Okay, Firecrawl goes and does it and finds them. And then it says, okay, go use my outreach writer to write a 2-part sequence that I can prep and then send to sponsors. It related to my brand, right? And so then it'll use the skill to execute it. I don't have to copy and paste the thing, but it'll like, if I have the recipe or the skill set up in such a way that's write it in this format, reference our business uniqueness, reference this, like how our business relates to their business. Claude is generally smart enough to figure out that like our business is the project, right? And inside of the knowledge of the project. And then it'll write those emails there totally different than if I just said, okay, I want to do the same exact skill, but for GenAI University, I would have my GenAI University project set up with all of my GenAIU related knowledge, but then it would write the same type of email in a structure, but the value proposition that I would bring to doing a private workshop for a company versus a live show is different, but it'll still follow the framework of the skill. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And Bruce, thank you. Bruce's comments are helpful as well. So the podcast becomes a project, and the skills might be an intro, a social post, the show notes. Each of those could be a skill so that it still knows the context around how those things work together, but it's still encapsulated podcast production or however I want to label that. And then I would have another project for my advisory work and another project for some other side hustle or whatever.
Yeah, and I would keep those projects distinctly separate if they are, because then you'll like risk like having context like muddling and it getting mixed together, and then it's maybe not as clear, and you're like, why are you talking about this? That's a totally separate project. It's in my project knowledge. Oh, that makes sense.
And you would still start a new thread. So in ChatGPT, like if I've moved on to the next episode, I start a new chat within the custom GPT, because otherwise any content from the prior episode, which is no longer relevant, will bleed into what it gives me for, not in terms of like chapters of the next episode or whatever. It has a tendency to just it like gets confused. It's just, no, I just gave you the transcript from this new episode. There is no other reference point. And so in order to avoid that, I've been to custom GPT and starting a fresh conversation thread within that. But in Claude, it sounds like maybe I don't. It's a sort of different.
How I approach it now that works for me when I'm doing this, because we'll have a thing where, hey, we have a new YouTube video. That I don't always want that YouTube video to be referenced as like the project knowledge base all the time. I just want it inside of one thread, and I want to bundle that inside of GenAIU. So I will upload a transcript to a new thread inside of a project and say, do this for this transcript. And like being direct and saying, this is the only thing I want you to do. I've never really run into issues as of late, as of Claude being like pulling other video context in directly, unless I'm like explicitly asking it like, hey, inside of this project in your memory of this, Do you remember another video we did with like Sabrina and Blotato and automation? And it might be like, oh, yes, I remember that. But there's settings that you can add to your account that can also turn this off because I know other people have ran into an issue where maybe in ChatGPT specifically, I don't know if they ran into this issue with Claude, is like too much memory of everything you had started muddling stuff up just across the board. And so they would just end up like clearing out a bunch of memory or turning it off. And I think that I'm trying to think of where it is. Export data. See, I turned off the thing to do that. Memory preferences. If you go to capabilities and memory preferences, you can update and memory search and chat in here and toggle those on and off and see. I've noticed more often than not, like the actual memory, like over in the top right, this memory right here tends to influence like every single chat more often, like all the time. Like it, and so like information that you put up here, if you do want this to be not referenced like at all, you might want to just be really particular about what memory you're having it update across the board. Or if it's always forgetting that your brand's tagline is do this, not that, and you don't have that in your memory and you have to keep iterating it, like adding that to the memory, even if it's like our tagline is always this, that'll translate to more of the conversations. But sometimes it's as simple as one sentence. Don't reference any other chat, just this transcript, use this skill, execute it, and then iterate it from there.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much, Darby.
No problem. Thanks for sharing all these links, Bruce. Bruce, by the way, shout out. It's been good to see you too, Shelly. Longtime members of the community here. And if you guys are working through this stuff over the weekend, if you're sharing your wins or we're running into things with Claude, drop a post in the community. We've got a lot of smart people here on these calls and also that are going to be checking in and learning from each other. And so if you do have questions outside of these calls, share it in there. Maybe able to shoot together a quick Loom video answering the question in between calls that other people can learn from as well so that we're able to keep some momentum going forward. Good to see you, Tyrese. I see. Okay. Okay. I see. Can we learn some new stuff about Claude, please? I'm super curious to hear about the new breakthrough. Yes, I don't want to leave y'all hanging and have that be an open loop over the weekend. It was not some weird marketing play. I just want to make sure that we're clear on what projects are. Because if you know what skills are, and you know what MCP tools are, and you know what projects are, that's like the baseline of everything that you need. There are artifacts too that I will like do like maybe just like a little bit of. I don't really use artifacts a whole lot. Maybe I use them more than I think I'm doing. I'll do one little bit here on artifacts. Anytime that you're creating a skill and you're like, create a document for me or a PDF for me or something like that, like those are, I guess, technically artifacts that Claude is creating. And you can add your artifacts to this left-hand side artifacts here. Artifacts. Is it not? What's going on here? You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Weird. I thought I had some artifacts. Oh, I do. Okay. So as I'm building out like different blueprints, executive briefs, different projects, that sort of thing, Claude inside of your accounts, let me see, projects. I'll do this one because you can make like little calculators with Claude. You can make like little mini apps, little games, like a lot of these things that Claude will do in code. Those are all just artifacts, and that's what Claude calls them. So you can save those to your account basically. And so let me see, I'll just do this one as an event activation, right? So I was doing research for like vendor research for some companies here. Maybe this one didn't say it was an artifact. I don't know. I don't really get too hung up on what an artifact is or not because I'm not like, if you were to go and say, make me an ROI calculator for this type of thing, like I'll do that right now. Create an ROI calculator that shows the value of being a vendor at one of these shows because you get to meet cool entrepreneurs in Austin. Make it an artifact that I can use and then upload to be able to share it outside of here.
Darby,
Yeah.
I have a quick question
I see
as
that.
it pertains to artifacts. So this is where I was going to upload the Google Docs that we're currently using. I have two different ones. One is like the campaign structure without it's like the bones or the framework. And then we update it based on what campaigns we're running that given month. And then the other Google Doc I have is like the daily structure as it pertains to like if it's a 3-day campaign or 4-day campaign,
Mhm.
thinking that I would upload both of those in the artifacts. And then when I went to make a project, I would say, okay, this is what we're doing for the month of February. These are the campaigns. And then basically ask it to create. Is that the correct location for for that type of work? Or should I not use the artifacts for that?
So like input this and then have it output something like based on what you're giving it about your campaigns.
Yeah, so basically those templates or frameworks I thought would be artifacts in Claude.
So those, I think those frameworks for creating that, I think that's more of a skill than an artifact,
Okay, that's helpful.
because then you could say, do this for this type of campaign, and then it follows a framework that you've pre-outlined here. And then you can do it. But there's probably, I haven't explored like at all now using skills within artifacts. I think we're going to learn a lot more about the skill combination with either artifacts or Claude Code, which is what I'm going to show you guys here. I won't leave you hanging, I promise.
No, that's helpful. So
But
then instead of diving into artifacts, I'll dive into skills. So thank you.
yeah, so I'm saying like, okay, so now I have this ROI calculator, which now I have this fancy ROI calculator that I could show to a sponsor, right? For example, here, I could publish this as an artifact. Publishing an artifact will make it accessible to anyone on the internet, potentially visible to search engines. Publish and copy link. Like I can get an embed code. Okay. You guys can literally see the chat link right here, open it up and see if you can play around with it. I say, hey, I made this calculator to show how impactful being a partner at one of our events can be for you, or how my offer or service as a consultant can help save you X amount of numbers or reduce your liability by this much, or whatever you're doing in your business, like creating these types of very micro apps. Claude is very good at doing that. If I add this to the project, last thing before we dive into the breakthrough. So I added it to my project and it just gave me all of this stuff. And now it's in my projects. Maybe that's where I can say, hey, reference this calculator and run it and then do something for me there. There's probably a few more rabbit holes that we could dive into with artifacts, but kept you all waiting too much longer for this. I'm going to show you right now the breakthrough I had last night on how a different level than I ever even would have thought about going with Claude Code, and how to get an idea out there and like what is probably still tip of the iceberg level type of like unlocking of what we're going to be able to figure out over the next 3 weeks or so. It all started, and Shelly, you shared this email with me, so thank you for putting this on my radar. Last night I was checking through some stuff and I saw this email. I got the email too and I ignored it earlier, and then Shelly shared it with me and I was like, oh, let's check this out. And this guy, Ethan Mollick, who I'd recommend like just following him if you're into like AI and keeping up with stuff. He's one of the guys that I pay attention to on LinkedIn when he posts stuff. It's very interesting, the stuff that he does and researches and shares. He shared a way that he was using Claude Code. In some other context here, I'm not going to go through and reread his whole email on it. He probably posted about it on LinkedIn, but it was basically like giving Claude this was the prompt that he gave Claude, that he said it went and spent an hour and a half developing, which I haven't had Claude spend that much time Claude Code for me. And apparently came up his post on Substack too, so you guys may have seen him there. This is the post that I just pasted the prompt in here. Is to develop a web-based software based on a startup idea that will make me 1,000 a month, where you go all the work by generating an idea and implementing it. I shouldn't have to do anything at all except run some programs you give me once. You shouldn't require my coding knowledge on my part, and so make sure everything works. And then it went through and I came up with a grand idea of selling prompt packs to people and making $1,000 a month off of it. So like that was Claude's like outcome from that specifically. But it got me thinking, because I was talking with my wife last night at the same time about how we just really want to be going more into like like, I don't know, we're developing and we're coding, we're building, we're doing all this stuff. I'm like, I also really doing in-person events where people don't have their phones out. There's a big trend of people going into using analog stuff again, getting VHS tapes, doing stuff that takes us away from the internet and away from the screens. And so I said, I wonder what Claude Code can do for me. What can Claude Code do for you? I'm going to show you the exact workflow that I have figured out to get something from Claude to write the instructions. So think of this using Claude to engineer a set of instructions to then giving it to Claude Code and assuming you know how to set up a GitHub repository, which isn't that tough once you get over the hurdle of understanding what GitHub is, but it can totally be a hurdle if you don't do anything coding at all. So I'm not going to get into how to set up a repository on GitHub, but we will be getting into that more as we get into Claude Code because Claude can send code to GitHub that you can then share with the world from there. I opened up a Claude account, a Claude tab in my project in GenAIU University. I said, here is this prompt right here, but don't do this. I want to do something that's a physical based idea. Like what would Claude come up with? I had it come up with basically a real world thing that people can touch and feel. Can you create like a prototype that people can interact with before placing an order? It should cost at least $1,000 at the base level. It should be a mock-up design. Bunch of prompting here that you can see and read. Interacting, engage way to stimulate the creative senses. I wanted to create a crowdfunding campaign for this concept, but I wanted it to go and take the idea as like a seed concept here, but do it for the physical world in a way that's going to actually connect people. From there, Claude goes, here's like some of the idea and concept around it. It starts to process the idea, and I say, wait, hold up. Before you go deeper, I want just the prompt instructions here because my goal is to get this prompt written in Claude first and then sending it to Claude Code. I found that even if I'm taking a prompt from Claude to Lovable, for example, to create a landing page, getting the instructions and everything fleshed out in Claude Code makes everything more efficient when you're using another app to continue to actually build out an app. So I gave it that. I said, hey, okay, here's the idea. Here's the architecture. Here's what I'm hearing from your vision. And then it's what's the core? A gathering kit, a one-time event, a visual ritual. And so I gave it more context. Like this is going to be the product to facilitate, and I want to make $1,000. I just threw that number out there. It's like, what would it come up with for a higher ticket physical product type of experiential thing? It thought about it. It only spent a few minutes putting this together, and then it came up with this seed prompt right here. So before I got started with Claude Code, I went into my GitHub account and I made a new repository. So I made a GitHub account. I made a new repository and Claude called it Kindred. I was like, oh, that's a cool name. We'll go with that right now. I'm not going to get hung up on the name of it, but it's actually a pretty good name for what this would be. And then once I had a repository, I copied this series of instructions from Claude that I was just speaking all of this in to Claude and it helped come up with this for me. And then I went into Claude Code, which if you're looking on the left-hand side of your screen, you click code and Claude Code is going to come up in your screen. You connect the repository right on the left-hand side in the upper left. I selected the repository that I was going to be building this in. And then this entire thread right here, I spent less than 2 hours overall last night working on this, and I'll show you the output so you can see what happened inside of that time. And all this together was probably 30 minutes, honestly. This repo allows me to push the code from the cloud version of Claude and ship and update that stuff. I haven't been using Claude on my desktop, not connected to it. I find this much easier to work with and pushing the code directly to Claude. But I know that there's other levels of using Claude Code. I don't code like this. Like that's why Claude is here to help me with this stuff and making the code and all of that. But it went and did all of this stuff and set up the entire file for me. And I went to Gemini and I said, make a prototype of this image. I uploaded that to Claude, a few different prototypes based on what the instructions that Claude gave me. And it went through all of this. I gave it a few bits of feedback back and forth. And from there, I mean, I want to be able to like create an app and then share it with somebody, at least like visually, that helps me like pushing it onto like a domain that I can just share with Bruce. Hey, check this out. Like I rebuilt our SideHustle game with this. And so I was like, okay, cool. Claude built all of this up. All I had to do was download the zip file. And again, there's other tools that can probably do this. The one that I found that I've just been working with is once I download the zip file, is I went to netlify.com, and with a free account, I don't have a paid account with it. I just made a new project. I deployed it manually, and I already did it, so I'm not going to make a project for it. I just dragged and dropped that zip folder into Netlify, and this is what it came up with. This link will probably change, but if you guys just want to look at it and pull it up on your end, I'll leave it up for at least a few days. Like the idea behind this was now like a deployable like crowdfunding campaign that I could probably just put a few Stripe links together and start to take payments on, and just tell Claude Code to change a few things here and go through that process of resubmitting it to GitHub, downloading the file, and then uploading it out. But for me, being able to use that idea from the initial seed for a concept and then having Claude go and use all of the stuff that we're giving it in terms of skills, fire crawl, these different tools, our own knowledge bases, information that we're doing, like unlocks a lot of different ways that we can work with Opus 4.5, which is what I've been using most, to help with coming up with the instructions that would then feed into something like a Claude Code, or really like you could test this out with a number of other vibe coding tools. But in a matter of just a little bit of conversation and iteration back and forth, I have an entire mock-up of a campaign that I could present to somebody based on an idea. And I personally think this is a pretty interesting like business that like might actually make sense. But I wanted to share that with you here as we get into Claude Code, with not needing to actually write a line of code myself. Like this thing is now deployed and I could share a web page and some version of an app with somebody through that process, which I had fun with, which at the end of the day is what I'm looking for out of any of these projects. But wanted to share that with y'all here in case it might give you some inspiration for what could be possible as we get deeper and deeper into the Claude Code side of it. And even just making like marketing pages, campaigns, that type of thing. I see a few questions or hand raise. Josh, you want to come off mute?
Yeah, thanks, Darby. That was an informative one. When you were showing that and discussing that, I think you had a step where you generated a prompt and then you used that prompt to generate what you just showed us. So what was the prompt you used to generate the prompt?
Let me see. I'll go back to the beginning of it because I might have sped through it a little bit if we want to see. The initial prompt, the idea was like, oh, if Claude can do this for a web-based app, like what would it be able to do for a physical-based app? So I gave it this prompt here, and then I said, no, not this, but I need you to do this. So I'll paste this now. I pasted Ethan's in there. I'll upload the chat of this. Oh, I can't even paste that in here. Do this. Here. Don't steal my startup idea, guys. Just kidding. Like actually executing on this is going to require a whole lot more than just selling the product, which like, again, I think it would be cool, but there's a whole lot that would go into here to make this something that's worth and deliver on $1,000 thing. I just shared with you a document that I copied from our last call because someone else asked about it. So you can actually like go through, but it's not this physical based startup, purely prototype, create the entire crowdfunding campaign, entire ethical selling of itself.
Gotcha.
So
you asked at a high level, you asked for what you want, and you also said, what is it that you're not asking for? What is it that you're not looking for? You mentioned that clearly.
Yeah, so I gave it this, and then it started to output, it started outputting this. And as it was going through this, I realized that I had a feeling that Claude was just going to go and do this all without me intervening with it, with actually getting to the instructions, which is where I feel like if it went and did all this on the right side, it's not going to actually be using Claude Code to do it. And Claude Code brings a whole nother level of agentic like communication between these tools to build the code out for it. So I said, stop. I paused it. Like you can, if it's going, you just click the pause button right here.
Yeah.
So I said, wait, hold up. Before doing this, I need you to, this is probably more important than I'm letting on here. Don't complete it here. I need the prompt to then instruct and use the full agentic capacities of Claude. I meant to say code. It said form, but it probably understood what I was saying.
Right.
Oh, from the prompt, I provided it and its meaning here to say full play, laugh, and connection. So I would give a little bit more context. I said, okay, This is an architect mindset, like what we're talking about, like being an architect of this. No, I need the scaffolding. I need the whole infrastructure before we start writing the code. I need the start to finish.
So one quick question there is, how
Yeah.
did you know that it was not using the agentic capabilities, which made you stop it and reprompt it?
I guess like some people would argue that Opus 4.5 is like using agentic Claude, but like this is not using Claude Code. Like at least my understanding of it is like Opus 4.5, like maybe Claude Code is using Opus 4.5, but like it's not, it's in a totally different dashboard in building this out with Claude Code. And I would have to go back and restart this right from the very beginning to like test that theory.
So this is
How,
Claude, right? This is the Claude part of it.
yeah, so this is the Claude part
So,
of it. And
so
so,
where, yeah.
yeah,
So where
I,
did you start on the Claude code? At what point in this?
yeah, so at this point, it got clear on the architecture. And then it asked me, what's the core experience of it, right? Talk to me, then we build. So I said, this is the ultimate product for this. I gave you a, I'm going to read this because I was using actually, I was just typing this so you can tell I was like watching a TV show and doing this at the same time. So this is all during after hours
So
prompt that
this
I
is
can give to
helpful.
Claude
So
Code, and then I
yeah.
initiate the agentic decision making to make me a full production display ready prototype of the sales page and campaign with interactive elements. And I actually removed one of the interactive elements. It made it so where I could actually like move around the box, and then I replaced it with an image. So it actually got a little bit of that. And then I did this, and then is okay, Darby wants me to create a comprehensive prompt that I can give the Claude Code or another agent to Claude instance that will do this.
So
Here's
so one
the,
quick
yeah,
question here is the Claude, the whatever you're showing on the screen right now, you use that only for the architecture, the planning, and the creation of the.
yep. I got this to the point where I need the seed prompt that I would then use to take to Claude Code. And even before I started using Claude Code in this way, I would still use Claude to do this, to build like websites on Lovable. Like I like literally would go through this whole process, get the entire instruction, the copy, creative direction and design, and then use like Lovable, for example, to create an output because the full start to finish was set up here. And so once this happened, this is the point where I got the instructions. It says, here's your seed prompt. This is where now I could publish this as an artifact. Now I could download as a PDF. Now I could add this to my project. This is where I copied this code and then went to Claude Code, and I just quickly set up a repository for it in GitHub. And then I pasted all of these instructions here within Claude Code. And then because it's connected to my GitHub account, it would just ship it to this other branch that I still haven't pushed to the main branch. And yeah, so like instructions and all of that were done prior.
So one quick question is, if you give all the enough context to Claude Code itself, would it not have done it? Do you always have to plan it in Claude, get the prompt, and then go to Claude Code?
It's a great question. I think it's worth experimenting with.
Yeah.
I haven't started with this directly in Claude Code. I it's one of those things where if we could literally test it right now, but I would have to set up another repository. And so I'm just not going to set that up right now because we're already at time. I think it's
So,
worth
but
testing, but I like having the ability to be able to refine the instructions that I'm going to end up like going with versus going too. That's why I don't go going into something like Lovable, which I still use, is usually like step 2 or 3 after a blueprint, after a creative brief, after the website copy, after the start to finish infrastructure, after anything else that I would want to, and here's the code to embed, here's all of this stuff. I like the interface of being able to work in like a Claude chat for that. And then just Claude is good enough once I've given it all the information, it'll give me like the one shot instruction that now I can go get the Claude code and it'll just execute it 15, 20 minutes. I think Claude Code is going to blow like what, especially once you're like, I know me anyways, once I get a better understanding of like how to work within GitHub, add more things into it, like API keys and keeping those secure and safe in those environments and making sure I'm not like doing like stupid stuff with it, which I'm working on right now with my team because like I hire people to do this for me for the bigger projects that we're working on. But like getting to a point where I can get an idea from 0 to 1 and figure out how this sort of stuff works, and then we can translate that in and then get it to full production mode. But being able to do that in 30 minutes to 90 minutes is, for me, helpful on knowing if it's going to make sense for me to invest a lot more time and resources into to take this across the gate.
Gotcha.
Maybe I take that landing page, I embed it into a domain called Kindred something, and hey, would you pay $1,000 to be one of our founding members? And if I got 10 people to say yes to that, I would go find a craftsman to build the box and source the materials and figure it out.
Right.
But again, just thought that would be a fun example to share with you guys here.
One last question to end this is very informative. Thanks, Darby. One last question to end this line is, you connected that repository to that agent, right? The Claude Code agent. Is there a way to tell Claude Code to, hey, given this is the prompt, now spin up 2 or 3 agents to do the work in parallel? I heard it is, I just thought you might cover it or not.
Yeah, it is. Like when I was having, I don't know about like multiple threads specifically, but there was a few times inside of this thread where it was doing something and I'd be like, oh, hey, also do this and then also do this. Like in a normal Claude context, like it has to finish the thing and then you give it another instruction. Like at least for me, it was letting me just run multiple like additions, instructions, do this, and then it would just keep executing all of them. And I don't know.
But I heard that there is a way to specify sub-agents upfront before you provide it a prompt.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I think, and part of this sprint and this workshop is, I think, uncovering how that does work right over this time. And so I'm going to be like learning more over the next few weeks along with all of you guys and sharing what I'm learning. Sure. And I would love to learn from you too as you're going and working with this, what you all are finding with it. Because I've heard the same thing. I just haven't gotten to the point where I've tested that just yet.
Sure. No, sorry to get ahead of the things here, but I just
no
wanted
worries.
to ask the question. Yeah.
No, I'm having a hard time sleeping nowadays because I'm so excited to just jump back in and start to code these things up. And I haven't felt this in years because I don't know, something about being able to use Claude in the cloud and then having it push to GitHub to me just is a barrier that it still has some barrier to learning and understanding it. But if we can figure this out, it's just going to open up more opportunities to build these different systems out. But all kind of starts with that architecture. See a question from Bruce or comment here. If you use Claude Code and command line, there's a plan mode that plans the whole project, then switch to execute mode. Yeah, so a lot to learn there. Cool. Thanks, Ali. We'll see you in the next one. Yeah, lots to learn here. So as you guys are learning stuff with Claude, and as you're doing it and you're sharing it and you're getting wins, like I would just encourage you to share with the community too. I don't have a GitHub specific training on my end. I do have a call with my let's call him my CTO on Tuesday next week to walk me through some of my GitHub understanding and how to set up some basics. There's a lot of free information on YouTube for getting the basics of a GitHub repository in. GitHub it's going to be the one you're going to want to just learn how to get a basic repo set up, connect that with Claude, and it's going to house all your code and where you can make edits to your code and different things like that. Cool, guys. I've got about 5 minutes left that I can stay on before I got to jump for my next thing. Hope you all found that helpful.
I have a question.
Mickey,
If no one else does. So I've been playing with the skills, right? These skills. Do I then take that skill and put it into a code to create something, or just housed in skills? And like, when do I use code to build a website? Or
yeah, this is a question we had on the first call that I don't know the answer yet. I think Vikash had the same question. It was like, if we're building out like agents to access skills, like how do we tap into those through like the apps or the code that we're building?
Like write the code for the chatbot and then upload that to some chatbot AI tool if there is.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you've been talking about, like you could either use Claude Code to build your own version of that platform we were talking about before, which probably wouldn't recommend unless you want to manage maintaining it and like really handling a lot more of the technical stuff and like building it out completely. Like code, see, like what I'm trying to figure out, like once I get a better handle on like how to get code, like with the GitHub and doing all of that stuff, is to be able to like for my own like AI agent assistant. It's just how a lot of the stuff I can just do directly in Claude. I haven't needed to build out like my own apps. So I'm trying to like push myself for a lot of these and figure out ways that like I will need to use Claude more. Yeah, like Bruce is saying, like for a lot of this stuff, like the business and marketing content, and there's not really a need to like build and deploy a whole GitHub thing for this type of stuff. You can make an artifact, which could have a lot of the code for building a mini app, but if you're going to want to build like your own app and you have this vision for a major app, like there's going to be a place for it. If you don't, you just want an easy way for your clients to fill out a chatbot and then get a report and then manage it.
Right.
I'll just show you very quickly because like with my understanding of where you're at, it probably isn't going to make sense for you to try to rebuild all of this stuff yourself. If you were already super savvy with tech and at a level far beyond even my own capabilities, like you may be able to do this stuff in your sleep. There's a lot of ways that you could approach this. If you go, and this is a good example, Nikki, shoot me a message on Circle. Dang, not Circle. I keep saying that on School, a message there, and I'll give you access for the month to the studio that I built with Pickax. Because I'll just show y'all, because they were a sponsor of our summit, and I use them for a number of different projects for specific reasons where I don't want to handle all the technical stuff. So when we're talking about building like a full front-facing app that works and connects and does all of this different stuff, can you guys see the inside the mind of your market thing? Okay, cool. A lot of you guys have already seen this, but this is built with Pickaxe, which means that I can set up a super simple studio. I can create my different GPTs. Some of these are using Claude, some of these are using OpenAI, and I have it set so that people can use one free credit. Okay. So I have one of our blueprints. I'll say this is the only one here. This is like part of the membership that people get access to. And so it's just a manual upload. I give people access to all of these different tools, but you can have a chatbot and be like, hi. And then my little AI agent, Moxie here, is going to respond accordingly, but it's going to use one credit. And so I'll have to sign up, create an account, and do all of that sort of stuff. Behind the scenes here is really the more important thing of why I'm showing you this. What's happening behind the scenes here is a recipe or is a skill that I have trained specifically to have this sort of interaction. What that actually means inside of my Pickaxe is I have all of these different studios that I manage myself, and I have all these different pickaxes. And think of Pickaxe like your own custom GPT or your own Claude project that has a skill that you can give people access to. When I click let's do this one, buyer's brief blueprint generator. I don't have any credits. Oh gosh. Login, sign up. Maybe I just need to log in with my Google account real quick. Okay. All right. So I give it my website. You build this out for your clients, and then it analyzes your website and it analyzes your context. And then this is, again, could you go and build this all yourself? Sure. Would I recommend you doing it if you don't want to go and build and manage and maintain all of this stuff and get everything set up and you want to go super fast? It depends. Might be faster to just get a Pickaxe set up for you if you have clients that would be accessing this regularly as like a part of your like service offerings. But again, like there's a lot of different reasons why you may or may not. God, website. What is going on here? Oh.
I basically wanted to create like a GPT, like a chat GPT agent, right?
Yeah. So what's happening? Yeah. So what's happening on the back end is I need to look into that one because it's not reading the website like it should be. This here is a recipe. This is a skill, right? This is what we can use Claude to make. And this is the instructions that I'm giving this specific GPT Pickaxe tool to follow as its instructions, and then how to output it as a prompt framework. And so a lot of this I've used like in a mixture of either using chat, using Claude to come up with the model for it. And then you could select what AI model you actually want your tool to use here. Like I said, it was model agnostic. You can use Claude, you can use chat, you can toggle between the two. And then you just pay for the use directly through your account here. And you can have it upload files. You can allow it to now this is brand new, allow users to hear a response that wasn't there like a week ago. So that's a new thing they've added. You can give it like all the different instructions But like the key here for the people that use this most is that it doesn't matter for your clients, like how they don't need to go inside of your Claude account and use a skill and do it. That each one of these tools is configured based on my book manuscript, which is a book is a giant series of instructions for the buyer's brief. We have all of the prompts that are configured right here in the back end of it. And again, probably used Claude for most of these anyways. And then actions are additional tools like Claude. We're talking about giving it MCP integrations. You can give it your own Pickaxe and ability to generate PDFs, Google search, and a lot of these other things too. So there's a time and a place for moving into a Pickaxe, especially if you're looking for something that's like client facing that you don't want. You're not just going to be able to give your clients all access to your Claude chat and then be able to actually see what they're like responding to and engaging with them. You can set your Pickaxe to do that. And could all of this be coded inside of Claude Code? Maybe. You're probably going to be spending a lot more time managing and maintaining it than you personally might want to. I'm thinking of one person that's probably like already built their own version of this from like Tyrese talking about Bruce. Like Keon is the type of technical whiz that would be able to build this thing out. He's from another mastermind group, but he's on a totally different level who's been crushing with Claude before I was like figuring out how I would actually be able to use it for myself. So I would get started with building out the recipes and working with them in Claude first and getting those really tight and locked in, and then figuring out how do we want to gate those so that people can use them, or like building, and we can cover that over the course of this month too. Like how would you get those to where other people can use them? I hope that helps give you some idea of it. Again, people have ran into the same issues. I don't want to give away the IP for my GPTs, so I'm not going to give 100 clients access to this and then not be able to charge for it or gate it or know how they're responding to it or doing all this stuff. That's what a tool like Pickaxe solves. And you can create all of the recipes and all the skills in that with Claude very quickly. Bruce, you can set up a Pickaxe so that each client is a stored business and create a brief that will be referenced automatically. Depending on what account you have on and how you want the setup, like you could clone studios and have one be specific for a client and then have it all that client knowledge specifically. Yeah. And so like that one studio could have all the client creator briefs and knowledge to it, but it could also use the same exact Pickaxe tools that you've built. So yeah. All right. Jason says, I can talk soon, Darby AI video clone. I do not have a Darby AI video clone walking around. If you guys see one, let me know. But it is me responding to you guys, believe it or not. I just use my voice to talk and text versus typing. Any other questions before we wrap up here? No, I'm good. I don't need one built for me either, Tyrese. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to, but all right, y'all. Good stuff. Great first week. Share your wins, questions, if you hit any roadblocks inside the community between now and Tuesday. But we'll be back here Tuesday, 10 a.m., same time, same place, keeping it moving forward with Claude Mastery. Cheers, y'all.